On January 1st, 2024, the copyright for Steamboat Willie finally expired, and Mickey Mouse finally entered the mystical land known as the public domain, where anyone with access to half an imagination can put a new spin on the mouse. Lots of brand new indie games have been announced, but not much else. But quality does take time, and I'm sure that a lot of new projects will be announced soon. But the pieces of media that everyone is talking about is the horror ones, because the only thing that's worth doing to a character that appeals to children is to give them a knife and a taste for human blood. Come on, did Winnie the Pooh teach us nothing? So Mickey Mouse is now a horror icon. But not because of all of these things. That's right, you've been beat to the punch by none other than the Walt Disney Mega Company. Disney's never really gone full R-rated horror with their favourite mouse, but they've certainly explored some pretty mature themes, especially in the early days. One of the most referenced examples is a 1930s Mickey Mouse comic where he repeatedly attempts to off himself when he sees Minnie hanging around other rats. Another comic in a 1930s Mickey Mouse annual has Mickey doing this again for the same reason. You know, it's amazing that Mickey and Minnie have lasted 95 years when this is how they started out. While the Mickey comics were massively popular, almost as much as the main cartoons, I'm going to be focusing on the Mickey Mouse shorts, mostly because I can't be bothered to sift through decades worth of newspaper comics. So, during Mickey's first few years, there were two shorts with a horror vibe. One is much more infamous than the other. The Mad Doctor is one of those rare cartoons that was poorly received by audiences even when it was released. It had everything a traditional horror film needed. A creepy castle, a mad scientist, and an evil scheme. It featured Mickey attempting to rescue Pluto from the clutches of the titular Mad Doctor, before being captured himself and sawed in half. But plot twist, it was all a dream. The happy ending didn't stop people from complaining that it was too scary for the kiddies, and in the places it was actually shown, it was only shown once. It was outright banned in both Germany and Great Britain. Both of those reasons led to Disney not renewing the cartoon's copyright when it came time to, and it entered the public domain. So yes, you could have made a horror film based on a Mickey Mouse cartoon before 2024. You just couldn't include any elements not from that cartoon. So I suppose Pluto and Mickey are out of the picture. Yeah, I see why no one jumped at the opportunity. Ironically, this neglected cartoon is actually one of the more referenced in the Mickey lineage. For one, it earned a spot in the Sega Mega Drive game, Mickey Mania, The Timeless Adventures of Mickey Mouse, as its own level, alongside legends like Steamboat Willie, Lonesome Ghosts, and the band concert. In fact, Mickey video games seem to love this short, as not only is it in Mickey Mania, but the Mad Doctor himself is a major villain in Epic Mickey and its sequel. And the cartoon is a minigame in Kingdom Hearts 3. And to think we could have made a horror movie on it this whole time. Runaway Brain is also a Mickey cartoon that has been neglected by Disney because of its horror theme. It was released in 1995, when Disney was going through their "what are we gonna do with this mouse" phase. It also featured a mad scientist, but instead of sawing Mickey in half, he swaps his brain with the brain of one Julius the cat. No wait, wrong Julius. Yeah, that's Julius. Wacky hijinks ensue, and this time, it isn't dreamed away. The cartoon wasn't banned, but Disney didn't give it a ton of attention after its release in theaters. It only got a couple of releases on DVD, VHS, and Laserdisc, before being locked away in the Disney vault. And now it's time for my obligatory Epic Mickey mention. Before the game was even officially announced, some pretty horrific concept art was leaked. And although the art was more of a test on Disney's limit of horror elements, it gave some people false expectations of the game's final look. When the game was actually released, it was a lot more Disney-fied than the concept art would have implied. And while the game that was released was definitely more unique and dark than most Mickey media, it ended up being lackluster for some people. And because of the failure of its sequel, it has since been forgotten by Disney, never to be released again. I mean, what are the chances that a re-release gets announced while I'm making this video? And now we make our way back to January 1st, 2024. Steamboat Willie is now officially public domain, and several projects are announced utilizing the character. And of course, the project that caught the most people's attention was the horror ones. The first project that I saw was Infestation Origins, a horror game revolving around an extermination company attempting to treat an infestation of rats, including one mutated Steamboat Willie. The game was first revealed as Infestation 88, because that's the year the game takes place in, 1988. But I guess some people had different thoughts, since people started fighting against the title, since it had Nazi connotations. Yeah, I think you're reading too much into this. But anyway, it was changed. From what we've seen so far of the game, it looks like a very generic game with Steamboat Willie blasted into it for the shock factor, as well as a bit of clout, because let's be honest, very few of these horror things would get any attention without Mickey as the face of it. But we'll just have to wait and see, since the game is still yet to be released. The Mickey 3D model does look pretty good though. The first film I saw announced was Mickey's Mousetrap, and this time, it just seems to be another Winnie the Pooh situation. The story revolves around a group of teenagers at an arcade/fun fair being stalked by a dude dressed up as Mickey Mouse. At least in this film, it's pretty clear that the killer is supposed to be someone in a mask, and not actually Mickey. So far, this also doesn't seem to have anything connecting it to Steamboat Willie, aside from the mask and some TVs playing chunks of the original cartoon. Again, I can't really judge, since it hasn't been released yet, but it just looks like it will be another generic horror film with the Mickey shock factor. Another thing that I'd like to add is that, like Blood and Honey, the mask used isn't an original mask, but this time the production team just painted over a vintage mask from the 60s, which my inner collector just hates. They really didn't have the budget for an original mask instead of destroying a piece of history. Now this Mickey project has actually been released. It premiered on YouTube on the 2nd of January in the form of an analog horror short titled The Vanishing of SS Willie. It acts as a documentary discussing the disappearance of the titular boat and the reasons it dropped out of the ocean. It reuses many forms of animal abuse in the original short and turns it into something more sinister. You can tell more thought was put into it than the other two things that I've talked about, and it definitely delivers on its creepy atmosphere and sinister story. I would definitely recommend you check it out. Unless you don't like dark stuff, then you probably should just watch the original cartoon instead. Plenty of other projects have been announced, horror or otherwise. A horror game titled Captain Willie has just been released, even though Mickey Mouse wasn't a captain in the original cartoon, but you know, anyway. Another horror film, which at least takes place on a steamboat this time. Hopefully as time passes, we'll see more non-horror projects, like a cartoon, book, or games. But until then, I guess we'll just have to see how the horror projects turn out.